The Saints are poised for a free agent overhaul. 2026's cap room means real solutions for the team's biggest needs.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, we'll discuss the future of Spencer Rattler. Will the quarterback be here in New Orleans or potentially elsewhere? We'll take a look at some of the free agents the New Orleans Saints could invest in this offseason, including pass catchers, star running backs, and of course, the ever-important offensive line. But we're going to kick everything off today with where free agency starts, which is salary cap room and how the New Orleans Saints are in their best salary cap health in years. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time being here with us this time, making us your first listen and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. Thank you for helping us get here as we bring you your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by friends over at FanDuel. The wildcard round is here and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack for every NFL playoff game day. Thanks for being here with us. The New Orleans Saints are in their best salary cap health in recent memory, which is going to put them in a very, very good position going into the 2026 offseason, knowing that there are a lot of places where this team can still improve and get better by adding talent, and they're going to have the money to do exactly that. Let's discuss how that happens. And it can happen with just a few quick and easy moves. The Saints only have, at the moment, going into the offseason, about 47 players on the roster going into next year. Then you consider that they signed 8 players to reserve future deals. That puts them over the 51 player mark. The reason why that's important is because during the course of the offseason, you might have a 90-man roster, but only the 51 highest paid players actually count against your salary cap space. So this isn't a situation where they have to fit all 90 players under the, I think a conservative estimate for the 2026 salary cap right now is like $295 million. Some are expecting it to potentially top $300 million. I don't know if we get there until 2027 though, so we'll see what happens. But with the expansion of things like the international player the international player program, but also the international play series, like the Saints going to Germany and playing, going to Spain and playing, eventually going to Paris and playing, something that we're hearing might not be until 2027, but we'll see how things go there. That might have an impact on revenue and therefore skyrocket the salary cap a bit. So for the Saints, who have been $111 million over the salary cap, $90 million over the salary cap, $71 million over the salary cap in previous years, they're roughly $24 million over the salary cap going into 2026. That's really good comparatively to where the Saints have typically been when it comes to this very conversation. And so the Saints aren't a long way away from getting things kind of in position to where they could start to spend some money if they wanted to this offseason. They're in a spot to where an extension to Chris Olave, which could save nearly $9 million, a restructure to Chase Young, which would save $10.9 million, and a restructure to Juwan Johnson, which saves over $6 million, is enough all in its own, to give the New Orleans Saints a little bit of spending money. It would be that simple to get them under the salary cap. Now, there are some complicating issues that go along with this. Cam Jordan, Foster Morrow, Taysom Hill, Romeo Doubs, and others are in situations where their contracts are set to void going into 2026. And so how that adds dead money to the salary cap hit is a big thing to watch. So while those players potentially leave, the Saints could be taking some hits there. But on the flip side of it, if you're signing some of those players to keep them around, that would end up lessening their cap hit. Let me explain why that's the case. So let's use Cam Jordan and Romeo Doubs as examples here. Cam Jordan has dead money all the way through the 2029 season because of void years and restructure prorates that have effectively pushed money into future years. And so what happens is that if the Saints were to allow his contract to void in 2026, all that money from 2026, which sits at about restructure bonuses of $7.56 million, plus the restructure bonuses from 27, which is over $5 million, plus the restructure bonuses from 2028, which is over $2 million, plus the signing bonus proration that's nearly $1 million in each of those years. All of that money, which equates to about $18.8 million, accelerates into 2026 once his contract voids. But if they were to extend him to another year in 2026, then that would end up keeping some of that money off into future years so that it doesn't all accelerate into 2026. So it actually saved them money to get an extension done. The same is true for DeMario Davis, who also has dead money very similar to Cam Jordan's through 2029. And so re-signing him and keeping him around for another year actually lightens up the cap hit that they would otherwise incur if those players were to leave, right? If their contracts were to void and they were to hit the open market. So if the Saints wanted to keep those two guys around, it would actually save them even more money to do so. So it would be a big move, good moves by New Orleans to get that done. So if you look at the restructure of Juwan Johnson, the restructure of Chase Young, those are guys that you want to be around in future years anyway. If you're extending Chris Olave, that alone is enough to get you under the salary cap. And then you can build additional actual spending money, right? Because that's going to maybe only get you like $3 million under the salary cap. But you can build additional spending money by re-signing Cam Jordan, re-signing DeMario Davis. You could restructure Eric McCoy's contract if you want to. There are situations with Carl Granderson that could potentially play out, right? So there's a lot of those little things that you could do as well. A restructure to Carl Granderson would save around 8.5, a little bit over $8.5 million. And then if you were to also, and this is where the Saints kind of have set up a precedent here recently, where they have approached Tyrann Mathieu about shifting the non-guaranteed money in his contract into incentives. They did the same thing with Cam Jordan last year. They could do that again in 2026 with Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara right now carries around $15.5 million in terms of what his cap hit is. But if he only has about $3 million of that guaranteed. And so if you were to take a large portion, maybe not even the maximum, but just a large portion of that non-guaranteed money that's there, and then turn that into incentives, you could save a chunk of change doing that as well, probably hovering around $7 or $8 million. And so when you do all of that, now we're talking about the Saints going from having having $24 million over the salary cap to being $3 million under the salary cap. And then by the time that we talk about all these other moves, extending Chris Olave, the restructures, the smart restructures, right? For the players that you know are going to be a part of your future anyway. And then potentially even looking at an adjustment to or a reworking of Alvin Kamara's contract, we've already positioned the Saints to be over $20 million under the salary cap and having money to spend. So now where should they spend that money? Let's get to that next, because it's clear the Saints are going to have the money to spend, but is the talent available in the free agency market? And there certainly are some names that the Saints should be interested in. Let's get to that next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by friends over at Ultimate QB. Everydayers remember Ultimate GM and how incredibly fun that game was, managing salary caps, trading players, managing rosters, all of that. Well, now imagine that same game, but instead you are the pro quarterback drafted by the New Orleans Saints, #1 overall, set to save the franchise, including actual gameplay as well. That is Ultimate QB Football Legend. It is so ridiculously fun. You get to actually play as the quarterback in this one, but sign contracts, upgrade yourself, build chemistry, and evolve with your teammates as well. Even be a little bit of a diva, dictate what kinds of roster moves your team is making, all of that. And hey, look, Ultimate QB also free to play, no ads, works 100% offline as well. So head over to ultimate-qb.com. That's ultimate-qb.com, or search Ultimate QB in your app store and use the promo code locked on, all caps, in the games store, so that you can get a free bonus when you start your career. Ultimate QB football legend, QB1. It's your legacy. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends over at ZocDoc. I think we all look for the same thing in a doctor, right? You want the doctor that's good at their job, but you also want the doctor that really listens, that makes you feel comfortable, that explains everything clearly, and makes it so that you feel very confident about your next steps as you leave that doctor's office. That might feel like a bit of a diamond in the rough, but that diamond in the rough doctor does exist. You just need the right tool to find them. That is where ZocDoc comes in. They'll help you find and book high quality in-network doctors so that you can choose someone that you truly connect with. In-person or video visits are available. There's also verified patient reviews for each of the physicians as well, so that you can figure out things like their communication style, all of that, before you ever even choose to see the doctor. Stop putting those doctor's appointments off. Go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL so you can instantly book the doctor that you'll love today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL, ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, family. Well, we helped the New Orleans Saints open up over $20 million of salary cap space in about 8 minutes. Now let's talk about how we can spend it and how the Saints can spend it. Well, we'll spend it for them here on the show. We appreciate you very much being here with us, and of course, being an everydayer and making us your first listen here on the show. If you want more, make sure you come and check out the Everydayer Club. Ad-free episodes for $5 a month, $50 a year, and even more, including film studies, prospect breakdowns as we get into the offseason, and much more, especially diving into a lot of that extra episode content starting next week. You can get on that $15 a month or $150 a year. Just click the link in the description or head over to lockedonsaints.supercast.com to get started today. So lots of spaces where the Saints could be spending money, but I think they should really kind of focus their spending money in the offseason on the offensive line in particular, in terms of the biggest spends that they might have, right? Where they'll make their biggest purchases. And we've seen some of our sports colleagues out there already estimate the New Orleans Saints signing players like Dave Andrews, the offensive lineman, to a 3-year, I think it was like a 3-year, $60 million deal. Now, that might sound like, whoa, wait, that's $20 million. We just opened up like $25 million for them. You're going to spend all that money on one signing? No, not necessarily, right? You can have the signing bonus, low first-year base salary, push money to future years in non-guaranteed base salary, all of that. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of manipulate the contracts a bit to make everything work. And the Saints are masters at this. They know exactly what it is that they're doing when it comes to these kinds of things. Mickey Loomis, Kai Harley, they can build out these contracts in a way that doesn't hamstring them when it comes to potentially fixing other areas on the offense and fixing other areas across the team. But I think their biggest money should be spent on the offensive line. That's just my opinion. And particularly on the interior. And I'm not super sure that that's only one signing either, right? That might not just be replacing Dylan Radins. That might be bringing in competition for Cesar Ruiz. That might be making sure that they have a very good backup behind Eric McCoy. Personally, I think the Saints should re-sign Luke Fortner, keep him here in New Orleans. What a revelation he was, to have a center that could step into Eric McCoy's position and not watch the team sink in the process, which is what we saw the year prior. Cesar Ruiz has the ability to play both guard and center. There were teams that were interested in him at the trade deadline. Does he become a trade target over the course of the offseason? Or do you just bring in competition for him and then see what happens for 2026 and then plan to move on at 2027? There's a lot of different things that can happen between now and then. But I think that the David Andrews signing would be a huge one, right? He would be able to plug in for you at either guard spot, and he would be a massive, massive signing for you. He's not the only more than serviceable, we'll say, interior offensive lineman that you can find in free agency this year, though. One of the guys that kind of fits a trend of New Orleans over the course of the past few years. You think about guys like Tyrann Mathieu, Jarvis Landry, Trey Palmer, Foster Moreau. What do they all have in common? Oh, Devon Godchaux. Well, they're all LSU Tigers. So is Houston Texans guard Ed Ingram. Also a former LSU Tiger. Very good interior offensive lineman, only 27 years old, played 80.1% of snaps heading into week 18, and is a physical but also athletic player, moves very well. and plays with the level of aggression that I think you love to see on an offensive line, kind of the stuff that sold everybody on Torres Simpkins, the undrafted free agent out of South Carolina in 2025. Ed Ingram had some legal troubles back during his time over at LSU, connected to allegations of aggravated sexual assault or minor charges when he was 16 himself, or going back to an incidents that took place when he was 16. Both of those were dismissed in 2019, and there has been no kind of track record of issue beyond that. So if the Saints are comfortable with that, and if organizations are comfortable with that, which organizations have proven to be comfortable with it, right? He was drafted by the Minnesota Vikings, signed with the Houston Texans years later, and then could potentially be a guy that the New Orleans Saints look to target as well. I think it's just good to have guys that are mean on your offensive line, and Ed Ingram plays a mean brand of football. So does David Andrews. I think that both of those guys could be fantastic additions for New Orleans. I don't know if you can pull off a signing for both of them. And so maybe it's one of those guys, and then like a Tevin Jenkins coming out of Chicago, a guy that was really, really talented and highly touted coming out of Oklahoma State, incredibly athletic offensive lineman. Only issue with him has been injury concerns quite a bit. He's missed, I think it's like an average of 6 games per year or something like that. Like when you look at his entire career and all that, he appeared in just 26.3% of snaps last year in Cleveland in 2025. Despite the fact, though, he still appeared in 16 games. So he was a bit more of like a rotational player more than anything else. If he could hold that role here in New Orleans again, that would be an excellent situation. You go and get that next starter in terms of spending big money, Ed Ingram, David Andrews, those guys, and then you sign a guy like Tevin Jenkins, who signed a 1-year, $3 million deal when he was with the Browns or joining the Browns in 2025, and then only played 26.3% of snaps and has an injury history. He's not going to break the bank if you're looking to potentially bring in a talented and aggressive and athletic player that moves extremely well. Low risk, high reward kind of signing, much like the Luke Fortner trade was. So you get a depth piece in a Tevin Jenkins that can come in and help you out, but then also potentially even compete to steal a spot if he's given that opportunity. So lots of ways for the Saints to really go at their interior offensive line this offseason to make sure that they are safeguarded and have what they need in terms of being able to improve going into 2026. 2025's interior offensive line play in particular, both dealing with injury, trade, backups that were playing, all these other pieces. But even when all 5 guys were out there, that interior still had some issues and still had some struggles, particularly in the run game. But it's not just about the players in the run game. Coaching's got to improve there. Game plan has to improve there. The drawing up of the run plays, blocking schemes, all that stuff has to improve there. So it's not just the job of the pro personnel department to flip the talent on the interior offensive line. The coaching's got to be better there as well. So we'll see what that ends up looking like going into the offseason as well. All right, let's take a look at a couple of other players that the Saints could go after. Running back, of course, is a really popular position that comes up a lot for New Orleans. They have some promise in Audric Estime, who is still under contract for 2026. Of course, they have Devin Neal, who impressed as a rookie. We'll see where things go with Alvin Kamara moving forward. Doesn't seem like he's interested in going anywhere else. We'll see if maybe the Saints and he go back to the table just to rework his contract to save some money or whatever it might be. We'll see how they approach all that. But there are running backs out there that could be pretty interesting. Zach Charbonnet from over in Seattle. He's set to be a free agent. We'll see if he actually hits the market, but he's set to be a free agent. Could he be a guy that comes in to be sort of the bigger body that complements some of the more athletic play of an Alvin Kamara? Breece Hall, if they want to go after a bona fide starter playmaker at running back as well. And then, of course, there's Jeremiah Love in the draft as well. So lots of different ways for the Saints to improve their running back spot, but some interesting things that they can do. You can go and get a big-bodied wide receiver, or at least a guy that plays physically, 6'2", 204 pounds. Romeo Doubs coming out of Green Bay just had a career high at 724 receiving yards, had 6 touchdown catches as well. He was only 4 receptions away from tying his career high of 59 receptions. Only had a 5.2% drop rate, one of the lowest in the NFL among wideouts that were targeted at least 50 times last year. So pretty solid stuff from him. Being reliable and being productive could be an interesting name to watch out for if the Saints want to continue to add to their wide receiver room. And of course, there's a lot of defensive players we can dive into as well. We'll do that in tomorrow's episode. Coming up next, though, I want to take a look at Spencer Rattler and what his future looks like, whether in or outside of New Orleans. Let's dive into that next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by friends over at FanDuel. NFL wildcard round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode right now. When you log into FanDuel every NFL playoff game day, you're going to be getting a profit boost pack waiting for you inside of the app. What's that do? Well, that's going to make sure that you can apply it to most of the bets that you already love the most, but it's going to give you more juice to those bets that you already like instead of forcing you to bet on something new. Every play then feels bigger, and the boost makes sure that your bets feel that way too. And of course, across all of this playoff action, you make your picks, then apply that profit boost pack, and then you're going to get even bigger payouts while the playoffs are rolling. The New Orleans Saints lost so that the Carolina Panthers could run right into a 10.5 point underdog situation against the Los Angeles Rams, the first one that you can get in on Saturday. So visit FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The future of quarterback Spencer Rattler is becoming a big-time curiosity for a lot of New Orleans Saints fans, especially after wide receiver Chris Olave took up for him and said that he deserves another opportunity as a starting quarterback in the NFL. I wanted to explore some possibilities that could potentially lead Spencer Rattler, to somewhere outside of New Orleans to potentially get that opportunity. And I got to tell you, there are some real options out there that could potentially be interested in a player like Spencer Rattler. Now, what I'm not going to do is dive into like trade compensation and all those other things. I assume like he's a 5th round pick. You're probably getting day 3 compensation for him. And that's great. That's really, really good. But that's not really the point here. The point is that this is a guy that went out there and performed well for you up until the turnovers started to kind of come in droves against Chicago and then again against Tampa. And at that point, the Saints had to make a change at quarterback. They did. They went to their rookie quarterback and now they're cooking. But Spencer Rattler still did a good job early on in the season. And so teams could be interested in him. And like Chris Olave said, who's becoming a big-time leader for this team, he deserves another opportunity to start, but he's probably not going to get it here in New Orleans. And so where else could he get it? And so I thought we would kind of run through a couple of different teams. And then I realized there's a lot of teams that could be looking for a quarterback going into 2026. If we started in the AFC, we look at Miami, we look at the Jets, of course, who probably have the draft capital to handle their quarterback situation, but they've had the draft capital to handle their quarterback situation numerous times and have failed to do it correctly. Pittsburgh becomes really interesting. If this is Aaron Rodgers last year, I don't know if it will be, but if it is, are they in the quarterback market all of a sudden? Cleveland seems to be perpetually in the quarterback market right now. The AFC South, when it comes to the Indianapolis Colts, is really interesting because when will Daniel Jones be ready to come back from that Achilles tear? And what do they do in the meanwhile? Because they can't keep falling back on Phillip Rivers here as they move forward, a guy who's now talking about coaching in the NFL instead. And so the Indianapolis Colts could be a suitor. The Indianapolis Colts could be a suitor for Derek Carr too, by the way. Let's not pretend like the Saints can't get multiple day 3 picks for multiple quarterbacks potentially going into 2026. Over in the AFC West, I think quarterback is going to be settled there. Probably not a lot of teams there looking for anything. Denver's got their guy. Los Angeles has their guy. Kansas City, of course, has their guy. And the Las Vegas Raiders have the number 1 overall pick, so they'll probably get their guy. I don't know if it's Dante Moore or if it's Fernando Mendoza, but either one of those guys could be on their way to Las Vegas. But still, we've already named like 5 other teams, the AFC alone, that could be looking for help at quarterback and somebody particularly with starting quarterback experience. Even if somebody's looking for an experienced backup, by the way. Washington Commanders could be really interesting. Behind Jaden Daniels, working with a guy like that, being able to have a guy like Spencer Rattler who has some athleticism to his game as well. Not Jaden Daniels' athleticism, but who has Jaden Daniels' athleticism opposite Jaden Daniels. You get into the NFC North, everybody feels pretty good there except for Minnesota, right? What's the quarterback situation there when it comes to the Vikings? That's another team. In the NFC South. What about the... So here's why I think the NFC South is important here. The Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons have moved on from their general manager, former New Orleans Saints pro personnel and assistant GM Terry Fontenot, moved on from their head coach and Raheem Morris, moved on from their CEO and Rich McKay as well. So they're going to be looking at rebuilding everything. They've actually already restructured or reworked Kirk Cousins' contract to give them an off-ramp come the beginning of the league year. Now, I don't know that the Falcons would be interested in Spencer Rattler or that the Saints would be interested in sending Spencer Rattler to the Falcons, but that's not the point. The point is, if the Falcons end up being in the quarterback market because their new GM and their new head coach, let's say, doesn't believe in Michael Penix Jr., then they enter the quarterback market, taking a quarterback option away from all of those other teams that we just mentioned. So it magnifies the QB need elsewhere. And then lastly, Arizona, which, by the way, is where Spencer Rattler's from. What about that incredibly exciting idea for him about potentially being able to go somewhere where he could compete to start in his home state with the Arizona Cardinals? So there are a lot of different options. Now, I think the Saints would be wise to and will likely want Spencer Rattler here in New Orleans, right? He has started in Kellen Moore's system. He has played games in Kellen Moore's system. He's won a game in Kellen Moore's system. He has done this. He's executed it. And so now if you're building all this talent around Tyler Shuck, you probably want a guy that's going to be able to be back there that A, knows how to communicate with Tyler Shuck. Shuck talked about how he, Jake Haener, Hunter Deckers, Taysom Hill were all very close, joking around in the quarterback room and everything like that. You probably want to keep that support system around him. So make no mistake about it, Spencer Rattler could potentially get another opportunity as a starting quarterback somewhere, but it sounds like he and the Saints would be pretty happy with the idea of him just simply sticking here in New Orleans and continuing to back up Tyler Shuck and being a part of the support system behind him as the Saints maybe add a veteran or something to that quarterback room for 2026 as well. All right, family, let's get into a little bit of Lanyap here for the real ones. Don't forget, you can always get Lanyap with the Everydayer Club as well, where we have a bunch of exclusive episodes, additional content, all that. You want more information on it, you can find it in the link in the description or head over to lockedonsaints.supercast.com. But now we're going to go into some Lanyap for the real ones that are still here for the episode. We saw the Saints add another big-bodied wide receiver for their reserve future deals on Tuesday. We already know that they did keep Elijah Cooks through the offseason here with the reserve future deal amongst the 8 initial signings that they made, but they've added another from the Canadian Football League. Wide receiver Damien Alford was signed to a reserve future deal. That news coming from it was 3 Down Nation, actually, Justin Dunk, who reported it. And he's an intriguing player with some numbers that are sure to get Saints fans excited. 6'5", 215 pounds, not 350 pounds, 215 pounds. But a 6'5", big-bodied pass catcher who performed big time at the Big 12 Pro Day, where he ran a 4.46 40-yard dash at that size. Yeah, could be very, very interesting. Spent some time at Utah as well as at Syracuse during his collegiate days when undrafted, as he entered the NFL, but then spent time with the Calgary Stampeders and really, really made an impression this past season. Ended up totaling the big thing around him is that he averaged 20.4 yards per catch. And yeah, when you're 6'5" and running a 4.46, yeah, I could see that in the Canadian Football League. Absolutely, no doubt about it. So he's one of the best deep threats in. I keep wanting to say college football because I'm looking at my notes that say CFL. Canadian Football League, sorry. But yeah, 407 yards as well as 407 receiving yards as well as 5 receiving touchdowns. Do I think that this is a guy that's going to come in and like light everything up for New Orleans and all of a sudden become the next big thing? I'm not going to go that far with him because I think that's unfair to put that amount of expectation on him, but he's got a reserve future deal. He tried out for the New Orleans months ago as well. So the Saints have gotten some opportunity to see him and everything. And so it'll be interesting. He'll be a big body that you certainly won't miss when you're watching training camp in 2026. And he gets added to this list of kind of 6'2" or smaller wide receivers. But now the Saints have him. They also have Elijah Cooks, who's 6'4", and they have Devon Vele, who's 6'4". So Saints finally adding some size to their wide receiver room. All right, family, in tomorrow's episode, we'll take a look at some of the defensive free agents that the Saints could take a look at signing, and we'll recap Kellen Moore and Mickey Loomis's press conference. We got all that coming up for you tomorrow. We appreciate you very much, as always, making us a part of your routine for saying yes to me on the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing, how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.